Kia ora whānau, and welcome to another episode of Get a Job and Get Healthy with Costas Enterprises. I am your host, Alex Costas, as always, and today we are going to have a little bit of a talk about I actually just finished a really good book. Actually, the last two books that I've listened to have been really cool. And I just thought I'd talk to you a bit about some of the books that I've read and, what you may want to read as well, and what they're basically about and why I liked them. It's not going to be a full-on book review like back in the old school days that everyone used to do. Just a general opinion. And, let me know if you've read them before or you haven't. As always, before we get into it, I just want to say a amazing and huge thank you. I'm currently sitting at 984 listens, which is shocking. Like I'm so close to that 1,000 listens, which means, of course, the giveaway. So for those, if this is your first time listening, I'm going to have a giveaway to listeners that email me at doncostas@gmail.com. That's DON for Nike, COSTAS@gmail.com. Email me a question. I will try to answer your questions. When I hit the 1,000, I will do an episode after that, and then that episode after it will be answering all of the questions. And randomly, I will pick a number from that thing, and that person will have that number. And I will offer my services as either CV, cover letter, interview help, or I will offer you $100 US to spend on my Redbubble, which you select the products and I will sip them and maybe give you a little bit extra as well. Or alternatively, the other option as well is basically if you want to have a sort of a 1 to 2 hour sort of Skype session or Teams session, just to basically talk. Maybe you've got an idea that you want to work and maybe you want to bounce some ideas off me. More than happy to sort of give you that sort of consultancy as well. So that's going to be the giveaway that I offer when I hit 1,000 listens. As I said, the way it's tracking, I had 54 listens yesterday, which just blows my mind, people. Like, you guys are truly my whānau. You guys are my family. I really appreciate everything. So, yeah, this is my way of giving back to you guys. As always, you can find my stuff up on costasenterprises.business.blog. That's all together, Costas Enterprises, all lowercase, .business.blog. You can find my podcast there. You can find my print-on-demand stuff. As for my print-on-demand stuff, before we get into what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick rundown of where that's at for me, and also then before we get into the books, of course. So to start off with, the Redbubble is going quite well. Last month I had about 173 visitors, most of which actually came from direct from Redbubble, so people had found my designs through Redbubble. About 73 of those all came from the one of my designs, the Never Forget and the Polaroid one. So that was quite cool to see that. No sales to do with that particular product, but I did get a sale in regards to, which I've told you guys about already, my hip hop classic one. I haven't had any other sales since then, but that one sale that I got was a graphic t-shirt, which was about $8.40. That's what I actually get from that. So after my last payout, all I need to do is hit a couple more dollars, basically be another $14, and as a profit, and then that would be paid out next month, for example, on the 15th when I get paid from Redbubble. Otherwise, I won't get a payment until I hit that $20 requirement, of course. So yeah, that's quite cool. I did do a little bit of social media after I spoke to you guys last, and I got about 46 all coming from the social media, which was quite cool. So yeah, sticking with it, gonna keep doing it. I haven't uploaded anything in a while. I did create a couple of designs, and Redbubble sort of went, hey, these are trademarked, and I was like, oh, I don't think they are. They're original. But just to be safe, I thought I'd get rid of them, because the last thing I want is for Redbubble to go, hey, this is trademarked. We've marked all three of these, so obviously one of my tags was mentioning some sort of trademark that I don't know about, and I thought better to take it down. And then when they hit me with a thing saying this could be a potential violation, I was like, okay, cool, I'll just take them down. It's just easier. And for all those people that are out there that are trying to do the Redbubble or trying to do the Teespring thing, if you do get a warning from one of these places, take it down. Don't keep it up. So keep an eye on your emails, because usually if you do upload something and you are potentially in breach, Redbubble will basically send you an email within a couple of seconds of you uploading it saying, hey, look, this doesn't meet our requirements. We've suspended it while we review it. If that comes up, just delete it. Delete the design. I know it's a bit of a pain to have a design and have it be, rejected or have to be deleted, but it's just safer to do it that way. So let's get into the books that I'm talking about. Now, for those that don't know, I currently use Libby. Now, Libby is a fantastic app. I am not a big reader, okay? So whenever I say I read books, I'm not actually reading books. I'm actually listening to audiobooks, okay? So we're going to go through a couple of the things that I've read, and I'm using quotation marks for the read, and I'm just going to tell you a couple of the books that I've listened to that have been really, really interesting. Now, some of them are for different reasons. Quite recently, the one that I literally just finished listening to just before I do this podcast, it's a book called Shoe Dog, and it's sort of a memoir by Phil Knight, who is the creator of Nike. And I am not a sneakerhead, okay? I'm not going to ever claim I am a sneakerhead, not compared to some of the others of my friends that are and have been. But I now have an appreciation for sneakers, and I have an appreciation for things like Nikes, and specifically for me, Adidas. I quite like the NMDs. They're very comfortable, which I like comfortable shoes. So this book is all about the Nike Shoe Dog, and it sort of starts back in about 1938ish when the guy was born, and you follow his journey from him basically starting up Blue Ribbon, which is the company that he creates, because of something that he'd studied. And all I can say is the first chapter is read by Phil Knight, and it's about 2007 is when this book came out, and it is just staggeringly amazing how much of what has happened in this guy's life while they try their best to get Nike up and running to a way that it is, the Nike that we now know. I found myself, it is a long book, okay? It's about 14 hours. So I'm not going to fault you if you go, whoa, that's too long. But if you do have the time and you do want sort of an insight into what it takes to create a business from scratch, like that kind of a business, it is immensely amazing. He's very, very descriptive. I don't know if he wrote it himself. It could have been helped with someone else, but you definitely get an idea of the kind of personality he is. His personality comes in through his words, and it is not the type of personality that you would sort of assign with a leader, let alone all the things that he had to go through, and the company had to go through to become the Nike that we know. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I got to the point where I would sit in my car while I was listening, turning the motor off and literally staying for another 20 to 30 minutes while I listened, just because it was so engrossing. Like, I didn't think I would be captured by that much in his words, but it really, really was. It was quite amazing. And before that, I actually wrote another one called Quitters Never Win, which is the Michael Bisping, the UFC fighter. His autobiography as well. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, why are you listening to that? But I always had a thing for Bisping. To start off with, I didn't like him. And then I got to know a little bit about him, and I was like, you know what, he sounds interesting. And I did used to watch UFC with my friends quite a bit. And after listening to this book, I didn't realize half the stuff that he'd gone through. Now, again, it's not his voice doing it. The guy that does the voice is amazing. He sort of does the Bisping voice, but then also puts on the voices of like the Americans and the Brazilians and all those sorts of people as well. Thoroughly enjoyed this from the point of seeing exactly how hard Bisping actually had it to become the way that he was and the man that he was. And like it is called Quitters Never Win for a bloody good reason. Yeah, I mean, again, it's another 14-hour book. It's very, very long, but it was really, really interesting. The next book I'm going to talk about is called Year of Yes. Now, this is with Shonda Rhimes. Now, Shonda reads this book. For people that don't know about this book, Year of Yes is basically about this person, Shonda, who is the creator, producer, super producer of Grey's Anatomy, Private Practice, How to Get Away with Murder, Scandal, all those sorts of dramas. She creates these characters, creates these people, and, you know, has been doing so for the last 12, 13 years. And so she talks about how much she changed just from choosing to change her mindset and go from a year of yes. Now, I thoroughly suggest this book. The reason why is it is truly, it's funny. She engages with you. She knows she's writing this book to an audience because she's used to writing for an audience, and she breaks the fourth wall quite a bit in it. And you can tell that it's, with some of the books that I've listened to before, you'll see someone breaking the fourth wall while they're talking about the audiobook, saying, you know, well, since then, by the way, this is a little thing extra for the audiobook people, yada, yada, yada. But you can tell that the way that she's written this book breaking the fourth wall right from the start. And she talks about her journey, and, you know, if you see a picture of Shonda, you'll know that she is not the, you know, petite, young, you know, thin woman. She is, you know, a larger-than-life character like myself. But she has so much life in her, and you feel it in the book. Like, the book makes you want to change. It makes you want to adopt this year of yes. So I strongly suggest giving it a go. It was very, very cool. I enjoyed it. Again, it was another one of these books where, you know, it was only about 7 hours, and I sort of went, okay, I'm going to listen to it. And then I sort of put it down, then listen to it a bit more, put it down, listen to it a bit more. But then as I was driving, just putting it on and laughing, like genuinely laughing. Genuinely, I felt I was having a conversation with her in my mind. And she was like saying everything that I was thinking. So really, really enjoyed it. Now, one book that I did read, for those that don't know, I am a big Star Trek, Star Wars, nerdy type person, and I found this book and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a go, and it's the William Shatner, his memoir is called Live Long and ... Now, of course, that is the basis on Live Long and Prosper. Now, this particular audiobook is about 5 hours, and it is actually William Shatner telling his story, so it is his voice as well. And it was a very good book. You can tell it is, it's basically one big thing, kind of like a memoirs, but not officially a memoirs, because he's already got a memoirs, I believe. But it is basically coming to realization that, you know, he isn't, you know, invincible like a lot of us feel like we are. And he sort of tells his story. He talks about the time when he was in Star Trek. He talks about the times when He was doing like Trek Wars. He talks about the ups, the downs. He talks about, when he had to deal with cancer. And so it's a very interesting look into his life. Like, he's quite candid and quite open about it. He's not sort of putting it on and saying all these things. Like, he's quite, and that's what I found. It was quite honesty. The next one is Blue Ocean Strategy. Now, Blue Ocean Strategy, for those that don't know, is a fantastic book. That was about 6 hours, and that was effectively a book about changing the way that you think. And this, for me, was quite an interesting book. I was recommended this book by my friend at work, who was like, once I told him about what I was doing with my podcast, what I was doing with my job, my side hustle and all that sort of stuff. And he was like, bro, you need to listen to this book. You need to look at this book. And I did. And I blew through it in about 2 days. It's one of those kind of books that I think I'm going to have to go back again and re-listen to it. It was very good. And I got sort of most of it. But it is one of those ones where it is quite technical. They talk about... I think it's definitely one of those books that you really would want to read, because there's a lot of graphs that you, of course, can't see. And there's a lot of sort of appendixes that you can't see. So with that, like, it is one of those books that I think I'll be going back and looking at again, just because it will help me grow my brand. It will help me grow what I want to do with my life. And yeah, I found that very, 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 very interesting. But again, I don't feel like I got the full... I didn't feel like I got the full complement of what it was that they were trying to express through the actual book. Then I read How to Be Fine by Jolenta Greenberg. That is a great book. Now, the reason why is it is based on the Jolenta Greenberg's podcast that she and her friend have. And it is effectively, it's another 5 hours, and it is both told from both perspectives, from both the ladies, and they talk about their podcast where this book sort of drove from, which is where on their podcast the intention was that they would take a self-help book, live 2 weeks letter for letter by what it was that the book was actually talking about. And on that book, in the podcast, they would come back 2 weeks later, talk about it, and if it was, and it's quite funny because some of the books that I will mention are actually ones that they tried living by for 2 weeks. And they tell you what's good, what's bad, what's, not even worth trying, what they had, the realizations that they had while they were doing this, the effects it had on them and their partners, because they do both have partners as well. It showed them dealing with some of them had gone through some things previously in their lives, that these experiences that they got from these books were helping them deal with those things, and address them. And other ones that they just flat out went, nah, this is bullshit. So if you are a person that does like self-help books, like I will admit I quite like self-help books. That's usually what I listen to. The last couple of audio biographies that I've talked about is the first sort of couple that I've been doing it that way. But yeah, it was a really, really interesting book, and seeing their sort of style. They don't really push anything onto you. They're not like, hey, this is what you need to do to be this, this, this. But they go, look, from what we've learned, this is what we found. You can use this book, you can not use this book, and they cover each book that they sort of pick for their own book very, very clearly. Now, I have read another one from Jolenta's partner, that is, So You Want to Build a Podcast, which is why I'm doing this podcast. That was a while ago, let's put it that way. One really, really cool little book, which, again, it was only 4 hours, but I blitzed through it really quickly, was The Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. Now, this is done by Neil deGrasse Tyson, the physicist and astronomist, and amazing thing. Of course, he, being a public figure, has used his voice for this, which makes it even better. I'm not going to make it sound like I understood everything in this book. I understood it quite a bit, and it was really, really interesting, just like hearing his voice talk to you about how the world was created, how we are created, in the way of science, and the way that he sort of explains everything is really, really cool. So that's a good fun read. One that I wasn't too impressed with was the Mark Manson Everything is Fucked. Now, I'd previously read his other one, which was okay. I quite liked it, and I thought it was very much in the same vein as another book that I'll talk about a little bit later. But the Everything is Fucked, I didn't really enjoy that much. I mean, it was quite dark. It was quite hard to listen to, and that was 7 hours. That was a bit hard to read, that one, I'll be honest. But at the same time, it was one of those ones. It's called Everything is Fucked, a book about hope. Except it doesn't seem like there's much hope in the book. Which I think is kind of the point of what he tries to get to. And so I left that book thinking, it's okay. But, you know, at a time of my life when I was looking at something like, I really want to be, you know, inspired by something, and then nothing. I also listened to The 4 Thoughts That Fuck You Up and How to Fix Them, which that was okay. That was about 8 hours. It is told by a guy that is a psychologist, British psychologist, and he sort of talks about his process that he has sort of developed on behalf of another process of how to basically identify thoughts in your brain, negative thoughts, how you change them. I did quite enjoy that. It was a good sort of thing to look at. 100 Side Hustles by Chris Guillebeau. Chris has a couple of books, which is, you know, things like 100 Side Hustles, The Side Hustle, all those sorts of things. Really, really good books. Especially if you wanted to go down the whole red bubble, or you wanted to go down the passive income thought. It's all about that, like how you change your mindset, knowing when you need to do this, knowing when you need to change this. If you are looking at things like that, this is one of the ones that you need to basically listen to. And there's a couple of others that we will cover on that as well. I read Thinking Fast and Slow, which by Daniel Kahneman. I got to admit, I didn't like this book. It was 20 hours, which it was painful. And with those 20 hours, it's all, you can tell it's been written by a Nobel Prize winner, and for me, it was just a bit too technical over my head. There was a lot of case studies which I weren't really involved in. I did manage to listen to the whole thing, but I didn't want to. It was one of those books where I was literally thinking about quitting the book halfway, and then going, no, I've listened to 11 hours. It's only like 9 more hours to go. I can do it. And yeah, it was painful. I think I took a little bit away from it, but overall, it was too technical for what I wanted. No dissing, of course. If you have studied some sort of psychology or anything like that, then it will be a lot more beneficial for you to listen to, because I think you will appreciate it more. I didn't have that background, so I only had the background that I taught myself in regards to the self-help books and what I've observed over my life. But it's definitely more focused towards the psychology majors, people studying psychology, basically. Then I read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which is, the Mark Maron one. And that was good, okay? Now, that was 5 hours, that was good. It is very similar to The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck by Sarah Knight. I got to admit, I do actually prefer the Sarah Knight series. I think she's much funnier. While Mark Maron is funny, he swears and all that sort of things, same as Sarah Knight, but Sarah Knight does pop a lot of pop culture references that I get, which make me enjoy it more. and engages with me more as a user. The 4-Hour Work Week by Timothy Ferriss is one of the books that Jocasta reads as well. I'd read it beforehand, and 4-Hour Work Week is a pretty amazing book. It is one of those books where that if you can get it going and you can think about it and change your mindset to the way that he tries to think, it will help you build what you need to build. And that is the way that you are trying to change your mindset so that you can escape the rat race and all those sorts of things. Then I read How to Go to Work by Lucy Clayton and Stephen Haynes. Now, How to Go to Work is it is definitely focused at more school leavers, okay? People that are wanting to leave their school and start going to work. So it talks about things like the interview, how to create a job, CV, all those sorts of things, which of course I do that anyway in my Costas Enterprises business .blog, and it was nice to see a separate side and me actually checking off, oh, cool, I tell people to do that, cool, I tell people to do that. So it's just further emphasis on what it is that I'm doing and making sure it's right, and it helped me think of some other things as well, which I've talked about before in the previous podcasts. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. This was 11 hours, and it is one of those books that my partner had read. She told me to read it, and I got to admit, it's one of those ones where it engrosses you. About halfway through, he starts talking about these other things that he talks about, and you're hooked. Like, you don't have to be hooked from the very start, but he does manage to hook you from the very start about how your habits are doing. Specifically about things like advertising, and how it's more focused to people that are looking at the psychology of marketing. And it is pretty shocking. Things like mouthwash back in the days were the reason why we now have that mouthwash that has that horrible antiseptic-y type taste is because back in those days that was how people thought it was going to make them feel like their mouth was clean, despite them having a chemical in their mouth that they have to then wash out with water and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very, very interesting book, sort of looking at more in depth in those sort of case studies. Febreze is one of the best. Once you start learning about the Febreze stuff that he talks about, you're just like, whoa, that's pretty freaky. And the way that the marketers used their branding and their ways to basically make Febreze a huge brand because of the way that it was. So yeah, that was a really, really cool book. I thoroughly enjoyed. The Magic of Thinking Big is another really huge book. It's about 10 hours, so it's not super long, but it was very, very good. Again, making you think outside of the way that you would normally think. How can you think more? And this is where we're going to sort of link up with the whole blue ocean strategy, but how can you think more blue ocean as opposed to red ocean? And when you read blue ocean strategy, you'll notice that one thing they talk about is blue ocean strategy is effectively how can you think differently to how your competitors will think, for example. Magic of Thinking Big is exactly that way. It's instead of thinking more on the way of thinking big in regards to, how can you do this, it's more how can what you're thinking be increased. So if you're thinking of the box, how do you think outside of the box? That's effectively what I'm trying to say. And you'll notice from my list that I start reading, there are a lot of the brain sort of like, how does this work? How does this do? How do you make this? How do you do this? The $100 Startup, again, that's a Chris Gallibu. Again, that's a really, really interesting way of stories that Chris has sort of compiled of people that have taken, pretty much a less than $100 to start up a business, and they're completely open and honest. Some of these businesses, they're not the big businesses, they're not the 17 $170,000 a year. Like, it's it's a side hustle. That's kind of exactly what it's about. It's about making a side hustle. Your Money or Your Life is another amazing book. It's about 11 hours as well, and it's one of those books that will help you sort your money out, which is kind of the reason why I decided to listen to it. A fairly newish book, which I listened to, and it was done by the actress herself, Idiot by Laura Cleary. Now, I follow Laura on Instagram and Facebook, and I didn't know much about her journey. I didn't know much about what she's gone through, the things that she dealt with. I'd just seen her as this funny comedian girl on Facebook, and at the time when I saw it, I think she was pregnant with her first kid, and there were some really funny videos. Well, this book is not only real, it is really funny. Like, she's gone through a lot of shit, and she's gotten stronger and stronger, and there's some really lovely bits in it. She's quite open, and while she's got a bit of self-deprecating humor in it, at the same time, you find yourself like laughing, because like, what else can you do in that sort of situation? That's kind of what she makes you feel, and you see what not to do and what to do. She sort of tells you in her own words. So yeah, Idiot by Laura Cleary, really funny. Of course, I've done the ones like the Robert B. Picaldi Influence, How to Win Friends and Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Both really good books, very long books, 10 hours, 7 hours. So Influence is 10 hours, and it's basically the psychology of persuasion of things that you influence, which it's a very old book, same as the How to Win Friends and Influence People. Both are very old books, but if you do want to get into that mindset of, how do you start influencing things, it is a really good way to sort of throw yourself into the deep end. But you do have to worry about that some of these books that I have read are quite old. Like, we're talking 1950s, 1940s, and because of that, some of the stuff is very outdated now. One book that was an amazing book, but still really fucking hard, because it was kind of depressing, but at the same time, like, the guy is like uber smart, and it's called 12 Rules for Life, and it's Jordan B. Peterson, sorry. And that was 16 hours, and that was very hard for me to listen to. There were times when, again, I wanted to just quit it, because it was kind of bringing me down. It was kind of making me, in a time when I'm trying my best to sort of stay positive, keep myself up, I just felt like emotionally and mentally drained from what he was talking about at times. That's not to say that what he doesn't say is little nuggets of gold. Like, it is 12 Rules for Life for a reason. But if you look at anything on YouTube with Jordan B. Peterson, he's a very intellectual man. He's got his own ways. People like feminists, for example, don't like him because they're like, oh, we're feminists, you're against women. And he quite openly says, no, I'm not against women, it's just, and he puts his whole spiel on why. He comes across as sort of chauvinistic, but he's not actually chauvinistic. Like, it's one of those ones where if you know his stuff and you listen to his stuff, you'll understand it. If you know him and you don't like him, then you'll find it very hard to listen to. Side Hustle by Chris Gillespie, again, another third one by him about the side hustles, the 100-day, all that sort of thing. That's him. Then I did You Do You by Sarah Knight. Sarah Knight has like 3 books that I can think of. There's The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck, You Do You, and I've forgotten the third one, but I have read that as well, and that was another one that was really cool. Again, she throws in her swear words, but at the same time, she also does it with emphasis. So she's not just going fuck. She's actually saying fuck, for a reason why. Very, very good book. You Do You is basically about, it's just building on her original concept of not giving fucks away, putting yourself first. That's pretty much what those books are about. Then I did Jab, 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 Right Hook by Gary Vaynerchuk. Now, you guys know I'm a Gary Vaynerchuk fan. He's got about 3 or 4 books. 4 or 5 books, should I say. I've read most of them. And this is sort of like the second one that he's got. Jab, 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 Right Hook is all about you building your brand, not caring about what other people do, and just you keeping, on track, build your brand, build the person you want to be for your brand. So it is very much focused to the entrepreneurs out there. So if you're listening and you want to start up your own side hustles, you want to start up your own things, you want to build your own brand, he is the guy that you need to talk to. And there's also things like Crushing It, Crush It, all those are his as well. Then I had Money Master the Game. Now, me and my partner laugh a lot about this book. This is Tony Robbins, Money Mastering the Game. And this is a long book. This is 21 hours. And it is quite hard to listen to, just for the simple fact that it is a whole lot of accounting stuff. It is a whole lot of how money works and all that sort of things, which if you can pick up half of what he says, you will find this book useful. I got to admit that I found it very, very hard to listen to over and over again. I had to renew it 3 times because of that. But at the same time, I'm so glad I stuck with it and listened to it, because some of the stuff that I'm doing to do with my shares and my investments now are all because of that book. And his other book, which he's got called Unshakable, which is a lot less. It's about 8 hours, I think. But again, it is an amazing book from him. When I started doing the Teespring and the Redbubble stuff, I also listened to one called Creative Quest. Now, this is done by Questlove, who's the musician. Just for the simple fact of the fact that it's Questlove, and if you don't know who Questlove is, he is a sort of a beats extraordinaire, drummer, one and part of the Roots on Jimmy Fallon's, where he has the Roots. Quest is pretty amazing, and this book, audiobook specifically, if you can get the audiobook, I strongly suggest it. He completely switches it up on you. Given that he is Mr. Music, he is a producer, he brings that into the book. I think this is definitely a situation where the audiobook is over and above 100 times better than what you would read, because he throws his style in it, he throws his sound effects in it, he throws his music in it at the same time, and it just flows perfectly. And the whole point of the book is to get you more creative. It's taking, a situation and going, how do I do this? And so when I was looking at how do I create art? How do I create things for my Redbubble? How do I do this properly? And yeah, the book that I listened to was Questlove, and I was like, oh, and it actually gave me some ideas for my designs. And then from there, it also helped me with a lot of other things as well, like the way I was thinking about things. Then I got the So You Want to Build a Podcast, which I said is by the Jocasta. It's actually by Kristen Meringer, I think. And Kristen is actually the partner of Jocasta with the podcast that I was talking about before. So she talks about how she starts podcasts. She's quite versed in it and has been doing it for a while. Another Tony Robbins I had was Awaken the Giant Within. Now, this is a 2-hour, basically a seminar that he's put on there, and really, really cool. It is basically one big seminar of, not being afraid to do anything and just go out there, just do it. Just awaken the person that you can be. The Accidental Creative is a book about, from Todd Henry. It's basically about, again, taking your ideas and making them sort of better. Crushing It, both Gary Vaynerchuk, both recommend. If you're an entrepreneur, you need it. Same as Ask Gary V, hashtag Ask Gary V, or all three I read. So the first Crush It is 4 hours, Crushing It is 8 hours, and Ask Gary V is 12 hours. He does his own voice for all of these books, and the Ask Gary V is quite cool because he gets like other members of the staff to basically pitch him questions that he got asked on his original sort of podcast that he was doing, but instead of giving the same answer that he did back then, he gives his new answers. And you will notice that when you listen to the audiobook, because the audiobook comes out a little bit later than the actual book itself, he gives you updated answers as well as the original answer. So he'll go, look, this is a special thing just for the audiobook guys, this. Really, really cool. The 10 Myths About Real Estate. This is a 4-hour book, which if you are looking at buying real estate, it is one of those things I think everyone needs to listen to. It's amazing. Then I listened to 25 Things to Say to the Interview to get the job that you want. This is quite a short book. It's maybe about 45 minutes. And yeah, the 25 things, I mean, it's quite simple. It's good. Then I did Entre Leadership, which is Dave Ramsey. That was a very, very good book. David Ramsey is basically part of the reason why I am now trying my best to pay off my debt. And yeah, I thoroughly suggest it for him. Another book that I actually read, and it was very, very hard to read because I read it on the screen, is called Micro Domination. Now, that is by Trevor Young, and that's where I first heard about Gary Vaynerchuk, because basically what Micro Domination is, it's a book about how people are taking over the world using social media for their own brands, for their own, using their brand to do what it is that they need to do. Very, very interesting book. You'll find a lot of stories in there, including Gary. Like, he talks about Gary Vaynerchuk quite a bit, which is where I first heard about Gary Vaynerchuk. And yeah, this was when I was first starting up my podcast, starting up my blog, and I kind of wanted to consume as much as I could about all that sort of social media type stuff, which is why I'm now more open on social media. And yeah, it's very, very interesting. Most of these I read in also January, sort of February, March of 2020. So we're going back a bit now. Work Less, Make More, Jennifer White. Very good book. It's basically about you maximizing your time, doing what you need to so that you can make more money. And the next book, the next 4 to 5 books I'm going to talk about are all, in my view, must-reads. First one is Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Just search Profit First and Mike M. This book, if you are starting a business, an actual business, like if you decide to start a Printify shop or anything like that, or maybe you want to start your own physical business, you need to read this book. It's about you, rather than bucking the trend of doing what everyone else does, which is, pay your suppliers, pay your employees, pay your those things. It's about you basically putting your profit first. So basically you paying yourself, and then with your mindset of profit first, you take the time that you need so that you can actually then pay yourself, find ways of doing things so that without you having to lose your money, you can still make your business survive. So, for example, if you are, a manufacturer and you know that you need to pay like $20,000 for the manufacturing of a particular, for example, a shoe, keep with the Nike theme that I've been using, then, once you pay yourself first, maybe the 8,000 that you pay yourself as a salary, how do you get that other 16,000? What can you do? So it's about breaking down what it is that you're actually doing, and can you do it differently? Can you get it cheaper? Can you make deals, all that sort of stuff? So yeah, really, really great book, Profit First. Then we've got The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. Now, I've talked about this a couple of times. This book is a must-read. Anybody that's in a relationship, must read. Anybody that wants to get into a relationship, must read. Like, if you can learn your love language, how you represent your love language, that's the important thing. And yeah, I think everybody needs to read this book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. It's about 5 hours. Now, The Profit First is about 9 hours listen, but really, really good. The next book is Unshakable by Tony Robbins. This book is only about 7 hours as opposed to the 21 that the Money Master the Game was. And I read this book first before I read Money Mastering the Game, because I was waiting for Money Mastering the Game quite a while before I got a chance to use it. However, The Unshakable is where I learnt more about mutual funds and index funds. And he breaks it down so well that you actually understand it. It's not as accountant heavy as the Money Mastering the Game is, but still pretty amazing. So yeah, Unshakable, Tony Robbins. Next one, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. I've got to admit, when I first started listening to this book, I almost fell asleep. It's very sort of more living in the power of now, but also it's very sort of meditation-y. It's very zen. The guy has a very monotone voice. And I got to admit, I found it very, very hard to get what it was that he was saying. I found it even harder to listen to it driving. Like, I just could not listen to it. I had to actually put it on while I was walking or while I was on the bus. And then we've got The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is a classic book by Stephen Covey. It is one of these books that helps you recognize the traits of people, and then when you're recognizing those traits of people, how you can mimic them or how you can adapt them so that you are also doing those things that the successful people are doing. Now, that's about 13 hours. Another really, really short book, but quite cool, is The Tao, T-A-O, of Pooh, as in Winnie the Pooh, by Benjamin Hoff. Now, that's about 3 hours. Very, very interesting book. Basically taking the Winnie the Pooh and showing you the Tao principles that you can use within those stories. And yeah, really, really interesting. The next one after that is The Millionaire Next Door. Now, The Millionaire Next Door is a 9-hour behemoth with stats and all that sort of stuff as well. But what it talks about is how you could be living next to a millionaire right now. You don't even know. The reason why you don't know is because they live minimalist. They live, they don't go out and do what we all think millionaires do. So it's about changing your mindset to thinking that, every millionaire goes out there and buys the fanciest cars. Like, no, most times they're driving the Prius, or they're driving the Toyota Raptus in my case. But yeah, The Millionaire Next Door is a really interesting way to look at the way that most of the millionaires back then were actually living. Then there was another Sarah Knight one, which is called Get Your Shit Together. That was the third book. That is amazing. Get Your Shit Together is basically you can't put it any other way. It's about getting your shit together. Now, that's about 5 hours. Again, she's very funny. She's really, really interesting. The Stop Acting Rich by Thomas J. Stanley is in the same vein as The Millionaire Next Door. Okay, Millionaire Next Door is more positive and that sort of things, but the Stop Acting Rich is the one that tells you all about how people are, all about how things are. And then we've got Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, another classic which everyone usually listens to. It's 10 hours. This one's going to surprise some people. I actually listened to The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump. And you might be thinking, why would you listen to that? Donald Trump's an idiot. Yes, he is. But the one thing you can't sort of fault Donald of is he does know the art of the deal. He does know how to negotiate. Now, this book, the first chapter is basically, well, the first chapter is more like, the intro is basically Donald just talking in an updated way. It's been updated since before he was actually applying to be president. So it's set about 5 years ago at this time. And he even sort of does a little plug in the book, like "Make America Great," bullshit that he sort of used to do. But when you get to the actual crux of the book, which is not read by Donald Trump, thank God, it shows you how he sort of built his empire by taking risks, by confidence, by believing in it. Which, even though I'm not a Trump supporter, I never will be a Trump supporter, but I do get why he got the way he got, and that was part of the reason why. And you can see it in The Art of the Deal. Like, it is one of those sorts of books. It's about 10 hours, that. The next book is The Millionaire Mind by Thomas J. Stanley. Now, this book is pretty amazing. This is another one of those books that made me realize I could be, I could actually escape the rat race. I could develop my own brand. I could do all those things. So, in my view, that is a must-read. The Millionaire Mind, Thomas J. Stanley. Really fun little book is The Greatest Love Story Ever Told, and that is done by Megan Mullally and her husband, which is Ron Swanson. The character Ron Swanson. Sorry. Oh my God! I can't believe I've just lost his first name. But yeah, and it is read by both of them, and it is very funny. I strongly suggest everyone has a good listen to that if they want a good laugh. We're almost finished here, people. The Total Money Makeover by David Ramsey. 4 hours this 4-hour book will change your life. Especially if you are like me and you were in debt at the time that you read this book. This will help you get out of debt. He is very boisterous. It is him reading it himself, and the voice is very boisterous because of that. But at the same time, it is one of those ones that I think, if you are wanting to sort of grow yourself and your money, if you've got problem with money issues, it is one of those books that everyone needs to read. Before that was The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. Now, T. Harv Eker's book is another one of those ones that just made me go, I can do this. I can build my brand. I can do all the things that I need to. His book is very motivating. And, it is basically about believing in yourself and knowing that, you can do all these things. So yeah, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind is one of those life-changing books. Same as Dave Ramsey's The Total Money Makeover. Both of those books helped me, okay? If you want to learn a new language, I strongly suggest you listen to the next book. And specifically listen to it, because the guy that reads it is just truly amazing. Like, he's a voice actor, you can tell. It's called Fluent Forever by Gabrielle Weiner, W-Y-N-E-R. Fluent Forever is about basically how you can break down the barriers and learn a language in about 6 months. He does have some stuff on his website, which you can go to, and he talks about it the whole time, which is pretty amazing as well. Really, definitely one of those books that, if you do want to learn a new language, before you start learning a new language, do look at that book. Then we've got things like Retire Young, Retire Rich by Robert Kiyosaki, who is the Rich Dad Poor Dad. And if you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, you need to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Retire Young, Retire Rich is exactly what I'm trying to do. And hopefully by you listening to this, it is what you want to do as well. It is about breaking down the barriers, realizing that, you can put money away now, it's going to compound and help you leave the rat race, basically. I also listened to Beating the Street by Peter Lynch, which is basically talking about Wall Street, how you can beat Wall Street effectively. And the other two books that I had was, we're talking back sort of March 2019 now, The Best Investment Advice I Ever Received. Now that is by Liz Kalman, I think, and that is 3 hours long. 3 hours long for you to basically hear from people like Warren Buffett, all those sorts of big media moguls, Wall Street moguls, and how you can basically make that sort of thing work for you. Then you got Napoleon Hill's Positive Action Plan. That's about 6 hours, and that's basically 365 meditations for making each day a success. And it's a really, really good book. That was the first book that I used with Libby, and it was the one that I started to really sort of realize that I can do things via audiobooks now and consume information that way. That is all of my books that I have read for the most part. I have skipped out a couple, but overall that's the important ones that I feel have helped change me, have helped save me a little bit as well. You guys have talked about all my other things, and I've gone through it with you. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed reading these, and yeah, it's been a very, very cool way to sort of grow myself as well. Now, this is a long episode, and I do apologize. I do want to say a huge thank you again. You guys are amazing. I do apologize for this being a day late as well. I was hoping to do another early morning NFT one because I thought I was going to get some NFTs tomorrow. I have gotten a couple as well, which I will talk about in another episode. But yeah, until next time, remember, flick me an email, doncostas@gmail.com. We are getting very, very close to that 1,000 listens, and as I said, there will be a giveaway. But until then, as always, people, I love you. I love my whānau, my family. So, have a good day. I love you, and as always, good luck.